Be seated. Thank you. Praise God. This is just always such a great joy and pleasure for me to be asked to come over, either here or on the college campuses over the years. I really do feel I get more of a blessing than you'll ever realize just being with you and among you. I'm so excited. And these last number of years, over a decade now, right, or more, as it began to grow with the college students, and all those years of the gardener's sowing and praying and believing God for a burden He put upon him years and years ago, to see it begin to really flourish and take off. And I tell you, I always leave feeling younger. I look in the mirror and nothing's changed, but I felt younger just being here and being around you, and the exuberance and the worship and the faith. So I'm blessed coming. And during the presbytery, this year was different because of the COVID, or a year and a half, but before that, I'd be up on the campus with you 2, 3 times, 4 times a year when pastor was somewhere else or whatever. So I just appreciate the relationship that I have with your pastors and with the church, because you make me feel so comfortable. You know, it's one thing that the pastors do and their family have known them for years, but a lot of you, the students, even if I see you around somewhere, you always come up and greet me and give me a hug or something, and really, you don't know how much it blesses me. I too want to thank the mothers. You know, when I was younger, 30s, young, I remember being upset at times when I'd see football players, baseball players getting interviewed and say, "Hi, Mom." And I said, it was Dad in the backyard having a catch with them. But it was Mom all the time. But then after having 5 daughters and realizing, you know, all that moms go through without, you know, singing their own accolades. When I was, again, when my wife and I had children, we used to say, our wife's with child, our wife's pregnant. Today I hear, we're pregnant. I know what they mean, that now, you know, 2 become 1. But I realized that all we did was sow a seed. The wife, her body's going to change. Her chemistry's going to change. Her emotions are going to change during those times. They sacrifice their body to bear that child. And this doesn't go on 9 months. It goes on a little bit past that, all the changes that take place in them that when you're first married, the first 1 or 2, the man just doesn't understand, you know. And I started thinking first of the natural and then the spiritual. God sowed a seed into our lives. And He's looking for something to be birthed out of it when He said, go into all the world, preach the gospel. You know what? That's going to take time, sleepless nights, rejection, all kinds of things you're going to go through as the bride of Christ. Hallelujah. But thank you, moms. You know, it may take us some time to realize how appreciated we must be for having you and being there. You know, they don't want Daddy to kiss the boo-boo. It's amazing how they stop crying when Mama just tells them everything's going to be okay. But praise God. I want to look at something today. You know, the Bible says that our ways aren't God's ways. Our thoughts aren't His thoughts. His thoughts are so much higher than ours. And you don't need to be saved for too long before you begin to realize God doesn't choose who we would choose. He doesn't do it the way we think He should do it. And part of that is not only for the person that he's going to use, but for everybody else to realize it's God. It's God. And if I had to entitle it as something, I would put down God's Reluctant Hero, or God's Unlikely Hero, or from a nobody to a somebody. I always think, or this wouldn't be as much today, but years ago you may say it, but from a zero to a hero. But all it's saying, most likely one, all of a sudden, is doing something great for the kingdom that nobody expected it would be them. Now, if you turn over to Judges chapter 6, we talk about a man called Gideon. Gideon was not that anyone at that time would expect to be a hero. Not even himself. And you know, when you get into the story, in the finality of the main one here in 6 and 7, you know, when he goes to the battle against about 1,500,000 soldiers of the Midianites, and he raises an army in the beginning of 32,000. So he's still way, way outnumbered. And then God tells him, that's too many. And he whittles it down to 10,000. 22,000 leave, and he says, if you're fearful, go home. That makes you feel good about the faith your comrades had when you say, if you're fearful, go home, and two-thirds of them go home. And he gets down to 10,000. He says, that's still too many. Why? Because I don't want you getting the glory. God said, it's going to be mine. It's going to be mine. So he gets down to 300. I never considered Gideon a coward. Some commentaries have put it there. He wasn't a coward. He wasn't full of faith. But a coward's not going to go against 100 and 130,000 men with 300. Something transpired in a short time in his relationship with God. It's amazing what God can do in a short amount of time in someone's life. Now, I'm not saying that Gideon, he knew about God. He was a Jewish man. He was raised up. You know the stories of coming out of Egypt. You know the stories of Moses and Joshua. He heard all these stories and everything else. So he had a knowledge about God. We don't know to what level, but he really didn't have a great faith in God at this point in his life. But in a short period of time with an encounter with God, it changed drastically. You know what the body of Christ needs today? A fresh encounter with God. Thank God for this word. But we got to get the living word inside of us. Thank God for this word, and thank God for the prophetic word. That's a timely and a life-giving word that if we grab onto it, it gives us vision and direction and a confidence that God's with us. So I want to begin on verse 11 in Judges 6. Verse 11, it says, and there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak, which was an Ophrah, that pertaineth to Joash, and his son Gideon was threshing wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. So it begins here. I started 11 for a purpose. We'll go back to verse 1 in a little while, but begins with Gideon showing you that he was out there threshing wheat in a winepress. And in other words, he was hiding from the Midianites. When they threshed wheat, they usually did it in a higher elevation. They throw it in the air, and the wind would blow away the chaff, and the wheat would fall to the ground. And they just keep on doing that, getting rid of the chaff. But because the Midianites at that time were invading their land, they would wait. They didn't take over. They weren't looking to take over the property and the land. They weren't looking to drive Israel out or Manasseh's tribe out, because they were doing something. They were letting them farm, letting them bring in the harvest, then they would attack them and take the harvest. And they were doing this, if you read here another verse, 7 years this was going on. 7 years they would let them plant, let them sow, let them till the ground, and when the harvest came in and they reaped the harvest, the Midianites would come in and take it. But somehow here Gideon spared some. He hid it somewhere, he had some, and they're gone, so now he's there trying to thresh it and trying to separate the wheat and the chaff. And he's doing it in a wine press, and the wine press, was down, inside. If you've seen them there where they're stamping the grapes and stuff, there's no wind there, it makes it a lot harder, but he's hiding from the Midianites because he doesn't want them to come and take it. And so he is hiding for a reason, because he knows that this is a good chance of happening with them coming with another group, finding out he has some wheat and take it. Verse 12, it says, "And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thy mighty man of valor." And Gideon is like, "You talking to me? I'm here hiding from not a whole army. Now he's just worrying about a small band that may have heard he had something. They're going to come back and get it. And he's there trying to salvage this for himself, his family, or whatever. And so he's trying to hide from the Midianites. And the angel proclaims, "You're a man of valor. You're a mighty man." Now, the problem is he didn't see himself that way. And nobody else really saw him that way. They may have thought he had a little gumption because he's out there trying to save something. The rest of them, we read earlier, they were hiding in caves. They left their homes and hid in caves at harvest time because they knew the Midianites were going to come and ransack everything. So he was out there trying to save some, but the angel comes, the messenger of the Lord, and it could have been a theophany, it could have been Jesus, and he says, "Thou mighty man of valor." What a way to start. He didn't start saying, "I know you're worried." I know. He comes out and says, "Man, you're a mighty man." We got to listen to what God says about us and not what we say about ourselves. It's one thing when we're listening to what other people are saying about us because they only know us from the past, or they're really close to us and know our weaknesses and they say stuff. But the one that's really pulls us down more than anybody else is ourselves. When God comes and speaks a word over you and says, "I'm going to make you," He's going to make you. He can do it quickly or take you 40 years through the desert and let a generation die out to raise up another one. But if we can hear what God is saying about us, even when we're in our worst condition. When they came, which really get me, some years ago, I went through Luke and Mark in our Wednesday night service. I went through one and then waited a number of months, went through the other one, verse by verse, right through those books. And when I did, I was amazed how many times Jesus told his disciples he was going to be turned over to the elders, they were going to kill him, and he was going to raise from the dead. On the Mountain of Transfiguration, he told them again, and on the way down, he said, "Now don't you tell anybody." And when it happened, they were all like, "What happened?" And I can't remember, but I counted it. It was like over 20-something times he told them it was going to happen. It's amazing that when we don't want to hear something, we just don't hear it. Now, how many, come on, moms. How many times have I told you? No. And it's like they really didn't hear because the minute they heard pick, like the ears just went. But so many times he told them this was going to happen, and when it happened, they were discouraged, and you read about the men on the road to Emmaus, and they're downtrodden, their dreams crushed, and when Jesus comes alongside, the resurrection Christ, they didn't recognize him, and he comes there, and he goes, "What are you guys talking about?" "Oh, didn't you hear what happened in Jerusalem?" And now they call him a prophet. Before they were believing he was the Messiah, now they say, the prophet, Jesus, they crucified him, he dead, and there's some saying he's alive. The girls came back and said he's alive. And they were just downcast. They were walking away from their destiny. And he begins to open up the scriptures and show them the things Jesus must suffer from the book of Moses and all the way through to the prophets. And then when, they come to their house and he acts like he's going to go on? Because he only wants to be where you want him. And they said, no, stay. And when he came in, later on, when they broke bread and they realized it was Jesus, they said, didn't our hearts burn? And what happened? They turned around and went back to Jerusalem, and they were in that upper room when he appeared. He knows how to get you back to where you belong. But look how downtrodden they were. Look how discouraged. They said, we had believed. We had trusted, the King James. We had trusted. We really trusted he was going to deliver us. He was going to kick Rome out and set up Jerusalem again as the kingdom. And we believed it. We believed it. And now look at what happened. I thank God that when our faith gets low, he'll pick us up. He's faithful no matter what. I mean, he didn't turn around and say, you guys are giving up, so I don't need you guys for disciples. You quit too easy. He went after them. He went after them and brought them back. And they were there when he came through that room compared to the 12, and they were there in the upper room when the 120 were there. Oh, God. I'm just believing he's going to pour out his Spirit again, greater than anything that we've seen before, because I believe that's the nature of God. The more we are in his timetable, I believe God goes from glory to glory, from faith to faith. It gets better and better. He never goes backwards. And if it is coming to some end of something down the road sometimes, well, then you're going to see the greatest revival ever before that happens. Because he's always going to show his mercy before his judgment. They're going to have a chance to hear about salvation and the goodness of God. So he says, thou mighty man, you're a man of valor. Usually talked about somebody like that was been to war and been to battle. You know, I had a friend that preached a couple of my conventions, passed away some years ago, and he used to say, you know, when the Bible talks in Ephesians about the armor of God, it wasn't talking about marching in a parade with shiny armor. He says, if I'm going to battle with somebody and I look at him, I don't want to see him in shiny armor. I want to see some blood stains. I want to see some dents in that armor and that shield. I want to see some blood on that sword. I want to know they've been in the battle. And they survived. They're a warrior. So, thou mighty man of valor. And verse 13 said, and Gideon said unto him, O my Lord. What? If the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? Where is all his miracles which our fathers told us, saying, did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us and delivered us into the hand of the Midianites. Now tell me you've never been there. God, why is this happening to me? Well, God, man, I remember when I came in and I felt the presence of the Lord and I felt the Spirit of God moving. And God, right now, we don't sense anything. We don't see anything. God, you forsook us. That's what Gideon's out. He's calling this man of valor. A warrior. And he said, why? He says, we heard the stories. We heard the stories what happened in Azusa Street. We heard the stories what happened in Topeka, Kansas. We heard the stories about the latter rain. We heard the stories about the charismatic renewal. But God, what about now? What about, that's what he's saying. You know, sometimes knowing what someone did in the past, if you knew them, and now you don't seem like the relationship's the same. And he's saying, what went wrong? But you've been around long enough and been under some tremendous teaching to realize it's never his fault. I read a thing some years ago where an older couple were driving in a car together in their, retirement years. And the wife said, honey, when we were first married and dating and stuff, we used to be sitting shoulder to shoulder and, driving so close. And the husband said, I haven't moved. I'm still behind the wheel. God hasn't moved. And we'll see the answer to this again in the first 10 verses. He's saying, God, We heard about Egypt. We heard about the parting of the Red Sea. We heard about the Jericho. We heard about Jordan being parted. We heard about Jericho's walls coming down. God, we heard all these stories, but we're not seeing anything now. You just must have given up on us. But he hasn't. Usually when those times happen, because he's trying to do one thing, get us on our face before him. God, what do we got to do? What is it you're requiring of us right now? I mean, with all that's going on in our nation and in the world right now, he's got the church's attention. He's got the church's attention. And it's a shame it has to get that way. I'm talking to myself also. Got our attention. Verse 14, and the Lord looked upon him and said, go in this thy might, that thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee? You notice he didn't answer his complaint. Lord, you've forsaken us. Where are the miracles? Where are the signs? God says, go. I'm with you. You're going to do it. Have you ever thrown a pity party before God, but he never really strokes you and tells you to go? Elijah in the cave. What are you doing here? You know, I'm the only one left. Nobody else cares, you know. But what did he do? He gave him another job. When it was all over, go out, anoint Elijah. Go anoint 2 new kings. Do this. God just wants to get a hold of it. So I got something for you to do. Don't look away and don't go by what you're feeling, what you're seeing, what other people are saying. Listen to what I'm saying. Get out of this cave. Go out. You're going to find the young man. Anoint him. God's got a job for every one of us. And we differ. And any job you have in the kingdom is important, no matter what you're doing. I have a personal belief. I don't know if I mentioned it here before. I have a personal belief because it's something God showed me in prayer one time. And I was in prayer years and years ago, and I saw what I believe is like the judgment seat of Christ. Not the great white throne judgment, but the judgment seat of Christ. And there's people walking down, and there's people like Oral Roberts, Schambach, you know, these big names, you know, and all of a sudden the angels are saying, stop, stop, stop. Let this little lady by. Everybody's saying, who's that lady? Who's she? You know who she is? I don't know who she is. I know who Schambach is. I know who Oral Roberts is. I know, who's this? And the Lord said, you guys had your tents, and all those people were there. This woman was locked in her closet for years, praying and seeking the face of God to have revival. Nobody knows her name. Nobody patted her on the back because she saved so many people. Nobody told her how great her ministry was. She just believed God and prayed that he would get a hold of a generation and he would move. You guys, the fruit you had was because of her sowing. And that set something in my spirit years ago. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. What does God think? Because there's no recognition in that intercession mode. People might not even know you were weeping and crying and convulsion over people getting saved and a new anointing coming to the church, or someone backslidden, you're praying for them back in the kingdom. They don't know about it, but God does. So God says, listen, you know, he doesn't answer him about why things haven't happened or anything else. He goes, he says, he replies by saying, I'm with you. Boy, just those words to settle everything. He says, he didn't even tell him where to go yet. He was saying all these things are happening. You're not moving. He said, you go. I'm with you. And then in the next verse it says, and he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my Father's house. So he's saying now he comes up with excuses, and God's saying, listen, nothing's happening. Don't worry about it. You go. I'm with you. And he said, me? We're the smallest tribe in the nation, Manasseh. My family is the poorest in the tribe of Manasseh, and I'm the little one in the family. I'm nobody. God says, yeah. I like to use nobodies. Because people are going to say, he wasn't a Samson. He was a nobody. But look what God did with somebody that just didn't say yes at the first call. God had to keep on pushing and keep on pushing. Come on, I'm with you. Go, come on, I'm with you. And thank God for his patience with us. And then the Lord said unto him, surely I'll be with you, and thou shalt smite the Midianites at one man. So he's saying to him, now listen, you go with the word of the Lord. He said, I'm with you. Go with this, thy strength. I'm with you, and you're going to destroy them like you were fighting just one man. Wow. Now, this is the promise to him. I put in my notes, Gideon wasn't anything like David. David, before Goliath, you mentioned David, the first thing everybody thinks is Goliath, but before the Goliath. So I don't know how old he was. We hear he's maybe been around 17 when he faced Goliath. I don't know how old he was, but he was watching his father's sheep. And he says, I killed a lion and I killed a bear with my bare hands. Now, I will assure you, if he lost a lamb or two, his father would probably want his son alive than those one or two sheep. But there was something in David's heart. This is the responsibility my father gave me, to watch over the sheep. And I don't care if it's 10 that the lion or bear's going off, if it's one. He's not getting them without a fight from me. And so when he came to fight Goliath, why was he able to say to Saul, hey, he may be a man of war his whole life, and he may be a lot bigger than me, but I have an experience with God. I fought a lion and I fought a bear and killed them with my bare hands. David started out young with a faith in God. We don't know how. It just tells you that. He's out there singing, writing his psalms and hymns, watching his father's sheep. The rest of the family, he's the runt pushed to the side. He's got the lowest job. But somehow he had a faith at a young age and believed God. And once he took the lion and the bear, I'm not afraid of that guy. I probably believe in what we call Sunday school and in their time, whatever teaching they had before they had their bar mitzvah, that David heard. You know, our forefathers wandered 40 years in the wilderness because they saw giants in the land. And they were afraid to face them. They saw walled cities. So God said, I'm with you. And Joshua and Caleb said, come on, let's go. And, God, no, we're like grass. They went by what they saw, what they felt, and they chose the whole generation. And everybody over 20 is going to die before I bring you into the promised land. Oh. And David said, no, wait a minute. I know my Bible. God brought us to this situation years ago, not with one giant, but giants in the land, and we almost didn't get the promise because we were afraid of the giants instead of believing God. So come on. I'll go fight that giant because God gave us this land. And it's the same thing. This is the same scenario. And if anybody just believe God, he'll take that giant out. And so God had to raise a youth to do that. And look at how irate the giant was. How irate people are getting with the church today if it's standing up and bringing conviction to people. What do you mean it's sin? You can't say it's sin. That's hate. So he wasn't a David. There was another, Saul's son, Jonathan. Jonathan's heart and David were knit together because they were both warriors. Jonathan, one day, his father was going to fight the Philistines, and they were outnumbered, and his people were going and hiding in caves. They got down to Jonathan, takes his armor bearer and says, let's go to the camp. And they go to the camp, and he says, all right, it doesn't matter to God if he saves by many or by few. So let's look over the hill and say, hey, here we are. If they say, come on up, we know God put them in our hands, and we'll go after them. If they say, wait there, we'll come, and just take off, boy. They go up there and kill these Philistines, the two of them. That was Jonathan. Gideon wasn't a Jonathan. There are those that seem to be born with an ability to lead and take control. And God will use them. New Testament one was Saul of Tarsus. Educated, raising up in the ranks of the religion, a Pharisee, wanting to be part of the Sanhedrin. That was his goal, a leader in Israel. And God one day gets a hold of him. He's trying to destroy the church. And God says, I'm going to take you from destroying it to building it. He says, God made me a master builder of the thing I was trying to tear apart. But Paul, again, was a leader in the religion and then in the relationship with God. But though there are people like that, and we see them at times, boy, they get saved and they're preaching in no time, and God's using them. But he's using natural gifts and then adding the things of the Spirit. But he also has the Gideons. And he also has the Esthers. Honey, go tell the king. I can't go before the king. He'll take my life. You don't go to the king without being invited. If you don't go, God will raise up somebody else. And who knows if you'll survive this thing. Get everybody praying. Everybody pray. Everybody fast. She was like Gideon. She wasn't quick to jump right in here. Oh, yeah, God will do it. God will do it. But thank God that he not only has the Davids and the Jonathans and the Pauls, but he has the Timothys, he has the Esthers, he has the Gideons. And a lot of us are Gideons. A lot of us are Esthers. Well, what can I do? What am I going to do? You may not know now. But God may use you in a mighty way someday, and he may have to be pushing you towards a certain direction until you finally get to the place, all right, God, I'm going to step out of the boat. Because even with the encouragement Gideon's getting, he still had to step out of the boat and say, all right, I'm going to believe it. Now, he did a lot of things. He put out fleeces. All right, one more fleece. All right, one more thing. So I'm saying he just didn't go with, there's some of us, it takes out a little bit, and he's patient with us. He's encouraging us. When people are growing and walking in God, and we notice the difference when they begin at a young age, when they're first saved. But sometimes God takes us to another plateau, and again, it's like taking new steps. Again, I have 5 daughters. By the time the 4th one was calling up and saying, my wife said, honey, Debbie wants you to come over, the baby's walking. We already got 16 grandkids. I've seen babies walk. We had 6 of our own, Honey, it's her first. She wants you to come see. Oh, God, okay, I'll go see, And I get there. She says, oh, Dad, watch this. And baby's there with his hands on the coffee table. She takes it off. He, boom, falls flat on his face. Dad, you see that? Yeah, I saw him fall on his face. He fell forward. He was like, forward. I never saw a mama. Don't embarrass me. You took a couple steps a little while ago. Get up. Don't embarrass. I never saw a mother do that. She kneels down. She says, come on, honey. Picks him up. Come on. You can do it. Come on, honey. That's what we need to do with new people. When they fall and stumble, we don't need to be kicking them and telling them they failed. We need to say, try again. Try again. I won't go there. Anybody in ministry at the time can tell you mistakes that themselves or they've seen others make that were pretty big mistakes, in prophecy or different things, and yet God was still with them. Because he's working through our flesh. So, my God, what time did we start? If we went back to verse 1, and I'm just going to mention it now. In verse 1 to verse 10 is why God is saying, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them to the hands of the Midianites. The reason they weren't sitting in anything is because God was allowing them to be chastised by the Midianites. And he always told them, if you begin worshiping, and it says here, they were worshiping the gods of the Midianites. And all these things, he said, what I told you through Moses not to do when you go in the lands and you have homes and you have vineyards, don't get involved with the gods of the land. He said, and if you do, I can drive you out just like I drive them out, which we see later on when he did for 70 years. And God was warning him. So he's telling them in here that they did the very thing he told them not to do, and that they were hiding in caves and strongholds from the Midianites, and they were being destroyed, and their harvests were being taken from them. And he's saying, and this is the answer to Gideon in the beginning, the reason you're in this situation is you did exactly what I told you not to do. Not to do. Boy, we've got to realize at times, whenever I'm in a situation and I'm praying, my first prayer is, God, what are you trying to teach me? And my second one is, have I done something wrong? I don't automatically assume that I've done something wrong. My first thing is, what are you trying to show me through this? I'm going to teach you forgiveness. Okay, so I can't give him a piece of my mind? No, you're not praying like you were last year. Oh, okay. He'll deal with us as a parent to his children. And so he's telling them that you're in this condition because of what the nation has done. It's in a backslidden state. So Gideon brings the angel an offering. He hits it with the rod. The thing is consumed, and he's like, wow, And then he's given a commission. Before he goes and fights the Midians, he says, here's what you got to do. Tomorrow, your dad has an altar to Baal. The whole village worships it, but it's on your dad's property. You go tear it down and build an altar to the Lord. Before you can deal with the flesh and blood problem, you got to deal with the spiritual problem. We all know the problems that are going on in our nation. But the battle begins in the spirit. And then God will show us how to do it in the natural. He says, you got to destroy that altar of Baal and your dad's before you take on the Midianites. So Gideon being Gideon again, he wasn't David, didn't run right up there. He waited till nighttime. And he took a few guys with him and went to his dad's property and ripped down the altar and made an altar back to the Lord. The village, somehow they knew immediately. It was Gideon. It's Gideon did it. You got to, give us Gideon, And his father said, wow, if Baal's really a god, let him defend himself. I believe God had to move upon Gideon's father to even say that. The first thing I thought about when I heard that story, it's like, oh, that reminds me of Elijah going up Mount Carmel. And he was going to rebuild the altar to the Lord. But there was an altar of Baal also. And he said, the God that answers by fire, we're looking for a fire, the fire of the Holy Ghost, the wind of the Spirit, come in and equip us what we've got to do in the day that we're in. The Bible says God takes the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. He has the Davids, he has the John, he has the Pauls, but he has the Gideons, he has the Esthers, he has the ones you wouldn't think of. And when you do read it, they weren't all that excited about doing what he was asking them to do. But Gideon became a hero. He took on a whole army with 300 men. And he went down. It matters more what God's doing and what God's going to say about us than, I don't know if his friends said later on, wow, took God long enough to get you to do it. But I don't know if they did that or not, because they probably said, oh my God, he delivered us. Who would have thought it would have been him? I had more, but I want to close with a couple of personal things. You know, as the thing went on, and there was a prophecy given 2019 Rock Church New Year's Eve convention by Ken Christmas, who preached one of our conventions years ago. And he prophesied God was going to close down the sporting events, close down the theaters, and close down the Broadway shows. And I remember hearing that thing maybe the 2nd or 3rd January. I said, oh, my God, Kent. 6 months later, it all happened. And you know what he said? God is going to judge the gods of America. We can sit and watch 1 football game, 2 football games, 3 football games on Sunday after church, but complain if we got to go to an hour prayer meeting. And God was trying to show us something that he was dealing with. And I was there. I love sports. That's all I lived for when I was young. But somehow God says, are you willing to turn your face to the wall and seek my face like never before for a fresh outpouring of the Holy Ghost and fire? I was a Gideon, pretty much still Gideon. I played sports, did stuff horrible in school. Didn't like to be in front of people. Like Josh, he loves to get up and talk and be in front of people. He won't get up here, even trying to pull him. He'll grab onto the chair and hold on to it or something. But I got saved. My wife got saved. We were going to a church there, and there was a man in the church that was a prophet, Greg Balin. And after a year, I think we were there a year, 14 weeks, 14 months, one of the elders came to me and said, Pastor wants to know if you'll do the Sunday school next Sunday, which was before church, in the upper room. They had a room upstairs with a couple of couches, love seats, stuff. And I was surprised. I said, okay, because weeks before he asked me, that the guy that ran the tape machine to record the tapes for the service, at that time they were on reel-to-reels. They were right in front of the pulpit here, and I said, no, because I picture myself with the tape flying everywhere. The pastor said, what are you doing? You know, that's what it was. I said, you're okay. And I studied. I had 25 pages of notes. Unbelievable. I had all these notes about a call of God in a man's life. And I went up in that upper room, and there was about 12 men there. And I sat on a couch, and I had prayed all week, don't send that prophet. Don't let him be there. God, please don't let him be. He makes me nervous. Don't let that prophet be there. Close my eyes, the elders pray. So when I'm done praying, Pat, you just share what God put in your heart. And as I have my eyes closed, I hear coming down the hallway. And I didn't have to open, I knew, and I felt the depression on the couch next to me. And there it was, Greg Balin. I went. They timed me 2.5 minutes. My shirt was soaked. Here. It was pouring off my, right, I stopped because my eyes stung. I couldn't read the notes because I was sweating like this. And I said, sorry, I can't do this. And the elder said, no, it happens. Don't worry about it, Pat. He's trying to be nice. Greg Balin goes, and he's patting my head. I'm saying, don't call attention to it, like nobody could see, you know. Then he grabs me by the hand, pulls me up and says, son, within 12 months thou shalt stand behind the pulpit, and thou shalt preach, and thou shalt teach, and thou shalt minister to my pastor. This guy's nuts. 11.5 months later, he comes to me. He says, Pat, I'm going to start a work in Brentwood. You want to come with me? I said, do you remember giving me a word almost a year ago? He goes, no, because you get a lot of work. You have to fill in the words you gave me. I went there. First meeting was a house. There was like 7, 8 women. They all spoke Spanish because most of when we planted the church in Brentwood, it was when we had the church up and running, it was 85% from Puerto Rico, Santo Domingo. His wife was from Puerto Rico. But we were in there with a handful of people. He said, right, Pat, we're going to have communion. You serve it. And they're all talking. I have no idea what they're talking about, but they're looking at me, so they must be talking about me. I took my Bible, I said, I'm going, I can't do this. And I left. About 3 or 4 weeks later, he came back to the church. We were both part of the beginning. There's a prophet there that night. And I knew I made a mistake. Faith liked it there because there was about 150 people. Now we were starting out with Greg with a handful of people. I said, Greg, I made a mistake. I said, I don't blame you if you don't want me. But I said, but I want to come back. He said, I didn't want you to leave. Come on back. So I went back. We had Wednesday night service, Friday night service, Sunday service. I did Wednesday night and taught on Wednesday nights. And I was teaching this night on the ark, Noah. I taught on the tabernacle, the priesthood, and all those books. Well, 2 pastors walked in and sat in the back. We had about 20, 25 people at this time. These 2 pastors came in. Been teaching for 10 minutes. I look, that's enough for this week. We'll continue next week. And I closed the Bible because this pastor, I knew there were 2 pastors. They just made me nervous being there. So I stopped. Then the day I left Long Island to come up here, and last service, Pastor Bill prophesied over me. He said, thou shalt go to the nations. Thou shalt minister to hundreds, even thousands. Once again, I'm saying, oh, my God, Greg, don't, it's something. I'm going up there, take over a church. Now I've been to 25 nations. I preached to close to 1,000 sometimes, usually 500, 600. But I started out where I couldn't talk in front of people if I thought they had any more knowledge than I did. I got intimidated. So what happens? I came up here, I preached my sermon one Sunday, went on about an hour and 20 minutes, a long one. I invited down to Cartersport, preached the same sermon in 30 minutes. We got back to the people from our church. Said, how come you did the 30 minutes here? It took you an hour, 50. I said, because I just stuck to my notes. I didn't have anything being led by the Spirit because I was a nervous wreck. Then a phone call. Doc Wilson, hey, Pat, want to come do some presbytery with me? We were somewhere, and he went, and Rita Fidel was there, and myself, and they went, and all of a sudden he stopped. He came and went, you go first this time. But see, I needed people like Greg Bill and Doc Wilson to push me out there. And I'm saying that because, I'm here. I climbed around with Phil and Jay. I said, you know what? I feel like who's the little actor that later time, dark hair. He played a lawyer in one movie or something, but he's only about 5'5". Something. I said, I feel like I'm standing between Arnold Schwarzenegger and something else as far as gifting and stuff goes. But you know what? If my wife was here, she would tell you, I would get home from those Wednesday night and time, lay across my bed and cry. Say, God, when are you going to deliver me from the fear of man? When are you going to take this fear? And it didn't happen overnight. It took time. And when he did, I was driving my car and he spoke to my heart. And he told me to turn to where it said, I create, all things have become new. All things have passed. You're not that little boy in an orphanage. You're not that little boy in a foster home. He says, I've created you. You're a new creation. And I said, oh, God, just like salvation, embrace it by faith. I said, God, he said, just one thing you got to do. I said, what? He said, forgive your biological parents. I pulled off the road and cried because I didn't want to. Didn't want to. But that day changed my life. But he didn't take it 100%. Because I'll still get a little nervous around Doc and radio. Lauren ain't too many older than me now. It used to be. But I'm trying to get at some, they'll get up there and they just have an ability to speak and God will use them and anoint them. And then he'll get a hold of somebody that doesn't want to. And the one thing you need to do is don't quit. It hurt. I didn't want to get back up sometimes because am I going to make a fool out of myself again? Now I'm going to close with this, which is a good thing he didn't tell me. I went back to the island and preached for Greg Bellin some years ago. he's driving me to Kennedy Airport. And he goes, Pat, he says, boy, he said, I got to tell you, he says, those first 2 years were rough. He said, I had a bunch of people tell me if I kept you on, they were leaving the church. He says, now, years later, when I say, hey, we're having a guest ministry, who do you want down here? First name that comes up every time is yours. And it's the people that said they didn't want you here when we first started out. But he he believed in the prophetic word he gave me. And that's what blows me away. He believed, because I don't know, I could have put up with that. Imagine we get in this morning and I said, open up to Gideon. That's all right, John, I'm done. I probably wouldn't be back. But somehow he believed the word that he gave me. And now, over the years, the evidence is God was in the whole thing. But the one thing I'll always know, I can't walk away at times saying, oh, didn't I do it? Because I know it's not me. If it was left up to me, I'd be that's all, folks. Love you guys. Appreciate you. He was talking about theme thing is, I don't care how you see yourself, how timid you are, how shy you are, God can use you, and he can use you mightily. Just don't quit. No matter how many times you fall down, get up. Try again. Especially if people believe in you. Bishop, if they say, no, try again. No, go lead worship again. Go, do a teaching again. If they're giving you the chance, do it. God will bring you through.